Hi, welcome to my channel, or welcome back. My name is Alyssa, and I want to talk about my plans for panning in the year 2025. So if you want to know what I'm doing with my makeup, then please keep watching. Okay, so I'm trying not to overcomplicate things, both for myself and for you watching. I was trying to think back on the different projects I've done, both on YouTube and before I had a channel, just to decide what is the most fun, what is the most helpful to get through my collection and not just let it sit there and get dusty. So I started trying the Pan Those eyeshadows near the end of 2024. I've decided that that's not for me at this time. It was getting really hard to have, a shade from this palette and a shade from this one, and to, have all these different palettes stacking up in my makeup bag and trying to remember which shades, and then maybe I'm using one shade and there's all these other shades that are just kind of sitting there because I need to use these other ones, and I don't want it to be like that. I'm getting eyeshadow palettes because I like them as a palette, but also the colors, on their own too, but as that color story. And then I have all these singles that I got because of those specific colors, and I want to be able to mix and match them. So that wasn't working. I did a project where I used all of my palette eyeshadows 5 times each, along with all the new singles that I had gotten. And I wasn't sure if I'd be able to, but I did end up completing that fairly early on, actually. So that gives me some confidence going into the new year of what I want to do with those and what uses I could handle. I also know that sometimes maybe I was layering up this eyeshadow and this eyeshadow to get the uses, and maybe I didn't need to do that. It was fun. At the end of the year, I gave myself a different challenge of making 3 looks on their own, like with a palette. So not pulling in other palettes. I did allow myself sometimes to pull in loose pigments or special shadows just to jazz up some of the more, do I say boring? Kind of boring color stories. Like my Marvelous Malls palette, it is, well, mine's only 4 because I used up one of the shades, but 4 shades of mauve, and that's it. So I needed a little bit something else to get 3 looks that I would be excited to wear. So in, keeping all of that in mind, what I've decided to do is a eyeshadow rotation. So I have 138 either singles, pigments, or magnetic shadows that are maybe in palettes. So my Juicy Boost palette from Colored Rain, those eyeshadows are all magnetic. I decided to count them in this. My plan with those is to pick randomly 4 shades at a time, put them in a palette, and add on as many shades as I want to complete a palette, or just to have a little bit of a color story, because I did like doing that this year, coming up with different color stories and, having some inspiration and being inspired from inspiration. Just being inspired by certain colors and what I could pair them with. So the main focus would be those 4 shadows that are randomly brought in, and I'm going to stick with my 5 uses. I will use them 5 times each. Once those are complete, all 4 of them, then I can bring in new ones. For the shades that I'm pairing with them, I will keep track of the uses, so they could, that could count towards the 5 that I'm trying for in the year. but it's okay if I don't use them at all, or, only use them once or twice. That, I'll keep track, but then, they can go back into the collection as well at that point. I don't know how often the updates will actually happen, just because, maybe some eyeshadows will take me a little longer to get through them. Maybe some will be faster. So I'm expecting at least once a month to have a new rotation, but it might be a lot more frequent than that. Or just, like I said, it might just depend on the eyeshadows that I get. So hopefully doing it this way, I could get through all 138 by the end of the year. And then for my eyeshadow palettes, I don't want them just to sit there. So for them, I am going to probably just pick one, but I could always do another at a time. And I want to, instead of focusing on the number of uses for those shades, to make 5 looks. But unlike what I did at the end of the year where I wanted just with the palette, I will allow myself to combine with another palette or with the singles then that I'm working with. And I might end up picking palettes based on what singles I get, just to kind of, go along. So I'm kind of thinking that I would pick 1 or 2 palettes that go along with the singles that I bring in. And then when I'm done with those singles, if I feel like I'm ready to move on from those eyeshadow palettes, and pick different ones for the new set of singles, then I could do that. If I'm not done the 5 looks at that time, that's okay. Just like those other singles that I'm adding on to the random ones, I will keep track of the uses or, the looks. And then, maybe I do 2 looks in January with a palette, and then in August I do another 3 looks or something like that. So that'll be okay. I feel like I sometimes use more of a variety of eyeshadows if I'm letting myself be a little more flexible. If I feel like I'm just stuck using the same shadows over and over, that I'm not getting creative, not mixing it up, then maybe I'll have to go back to tracking uses for my palettes. But I did do it this year, so I'm hoping that I can be better and not have to do that again. So our eyeshadow rotation, 4 random singles, add on as many as I want, have an eyeshadow palette that I pick to go along with it, maybe a couple, rotating them, getting 5 looks with those, getting 5 uses out of all the singles, and we're going to see how it goes in 2025. Oh, one more thing. If I feel like I'm getting close to hitting pan or using up any of the eyeshadows, then I might keep them around longer than the uses or the times or the looks or any of that, just to, hit some pans as well and, do that, because that's fun too. I do have another project that's just on Instagram. It was started by 2 people and it's called Time to Pan. It's really basic and that's why I'm keeping it. It's not necessarily panning, but you might end up getting pans because of it. You start with 4 eyeshadows, and the first eyeshadow is 1 use, the next one is 2, 3, 4, and it just keeps going. So as you finish the uses of one, then you bring another one, and then, after the first 4, then the next shade would be shade 5 that's brought in, and so on. And they were doing 24 because of the year 2024. I guess I'll just see. I'm still very early on in my count because I started late. But if you want to see a little bit more of that, one does include my palettes and singles. So if you like having a little bit more of that randomness, then you can also check that out on my Instagram. Sometimes I show looks with it. Sometimes I, do other things. There are other projects that I plan on keeping for this year. So we have Deck of Panning. I find that one fun. That one starts, I believe, January 20th. So, you know, that one will be good. And I will stick with Expand Those Pans. And I have decided that, so in my Expand Those Pans, when I roll in eyeshadows, it's to use them 10 times. I will count those uses also with using, if they're the singles, you know, if they're in this rotation project as well, I will count that both ways. So if I had something in Expand Those Pans, it would be finished for the year, if you will, for what I need to do. And also I have my Four Seasons project pan, and that one doesn't end, you know, with 2024. It's a continuation thing because we're still in winter and it just goes by season. So I'm not going to count any of the uses before, like back with 2024. I will only count starting, you know, with January of 2025. Any new uses of those singles could then count, because again, I just want to get the uses. So it doesn't matter if it's because it's in a project. And that might also happen with Deck of Panning. Sometimes I roll in the loose pigments, or, you know, to hit a pan or things like that. So I'm using eyeshadows that way. Then, you know, to me, that's fine. The whole point is just using everything. So if you have any questions for me or think that I missed anything, then please let me know. I haven't actually picked the shades. I'm going to make that a separate video where I just kind of kick it off. This is just me talking about my panning right now, so you know what to expect. So yeah, I'm excited to see what shades I get and what I'm in the mood to, you know, am I going to give myself a more wild color story? Make it a little harder? I don't know. I think that could be good at least a few times this year. So thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed, then maybe you would like to do that, or give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Until my next video, I hope you'll be doing well, and I'll see you then. Bye!